Hey everybody, hope everybody's doing good. Why don't we do an ancient history news video? I think it's been about 8 days. First story, we're going to go down to Pakistan. This is Gilgit-Baltistan down here. A dam's going to be built. This is one of the areas that's going to be affected. Pretty mountainous part of the world here. Let's just read. This story is dated today. Chinese building dam to submerge engraved heritage rocks of Buddhism in Gilgit-Baltistan. Here is a look. Some pretty incredible Buddhist rock carvings here. It says controversy erupted in the area when the Pakistani government signed a 442 billion, and that would be in rupees, dollar agreement with the Chinese government to build a dam. It's going to submerge about 50 villages and a lot of heritage sites here. Here's a huge rock carving. This is over 50 feet tall, the Karga Buddha. And some of these sites are going to definitely be threatened when the waters rise after the dam is built. Here's a huge granite boulder. They call this the Mound Buddha, sitting here meditating. Little Buddhas surrounding him. It's on a granite boulder in the area here. Here's a view overlooking the whole valley, and the rock carvings are down near the river there. Here's a look from down on the water, surrounding view. Pretty awesome landscape here. I've talked a lot about dam construction lately. Here, China is putting up the money for a dam to be built in Pakistan. Some important sites are going to be lost here. Maybe 1,500 years old. These rock carvings, pretty important to the people in the area. Next story, let's go down to Siberia here, Lake Baikal. There's a finding here that really goes along with some of my ancient America videos. This is a huge lake. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this place. Finding done here really connects this place to ancient America. Here's a story from 4 days ago. Oldest connection with Native Americans identified near Lake Baikal in Siberia. Here, they were doing some research work down here in 1976. One of a few different periods of research they did here. It says, using human population genetics, ancient pathogen genomics, and isotope analysis, a team of researchers assessed the population history of the Lake Baikal region, finding the deepest connection to date between the peoples of Siberia and the Americas. The current study, published in the Cell Journal, also demonstrates human mobility and hence connectivity across Eurasia during the early Bronze Age. Here's a look from the Selenga River, close to the archaeological site here. It says, past studies have indicated a connection between Siberian and American populations, but a 14,000-year-old individual analyzed in this study is the oldest to carry the mixed ancestry present in Native Americans. Here's a fragmented tooth that they did the research on, 14,000 years old. It says, in addition to this transcontinental connection, the study presented connectivity within Eurasia as evidence in both human and pathogen genomes, as well as stable isotope analysis, whatever that means. Combining these lines of evidence, the researchers were able to produce a detailed description of the population history in the Lake Baikal region. That's pretty interesting, but that was all one big continent 14,000 years ago. It wasn't divided like it is today. Well, that's a pretty interesting story. This is physics.org. Many different sites were excavated here, studies done, connections to North America. Next story, why don't we go down to this region of the world? Go down to central Java here. Borobudur, right down here. This is a pretty cool site. This is one of the coolest temples in the world, really. Central Java here. Overhead, very cool. Perfectly aligned to the north. This line right here goes perfectly east to west. This one here, perfectly north to south. Here we are on top of the temple. Stupas up here. There's a sacred number involved with how many of those are here. Here's a look out, down, out of the temple. Here's a look from ground level. This place was covered with volcanic ash at one period, then uncovered. But pretty fascinating Buddhist site here. Here's some good news coming from a few days ago. Borobudur and Prambanan temples to reopen in June. There's a look. Ancient stupas up here. It says this place is opening up in June with new regulations and guidelines, of course. Washing stations set up every 100 meters around this site. And that's all well and good. anything to do to reopen the place. We're all kind of getting used to, I don't even want to say the new normal, and kind of getting sick of that phrase. But people can put in regulations and new rules, and governments can stipulate this and that. But you're the only one that's going to keep yourself safe. Just be smart on your own. That's the only thing I got to say about the situation. This story caught my eye too. Citronella oil to preserve at Borobudur Temple. There are some looks, but they're actually using citronella oil to preserve this ancient site. It says starting in 2021, conservation work at Borobudur Temple in central Java will be carried out using micro-emulsion of citronella oil. That is pretty interesting. I've never heard of that before. Whatever works. It says the move will be part of efforts to promote the use of local natural resources for preserving the cultural heritage sites, he added. I guess citronella oil is environmentally friendly and it's safe to use. Not sure exactly why they use it. I know killing moss, and it's a little safer than chemicals, but that's an interesting story, and I will leave a link below. Next story, why don't we go down to Egypt? Why not? Go down to Deir el Medina, not to be confused with funky cold Medina. Here's the Valley of the Kings right nearby. There has been some work done here that really goes with one of my videos I did about a year ago. Let's just talk about it. Here's a story coming from a few days ago. And ancient history stories are not the easiest to find. This comes from UMSL, I'm assuming University of Missouri, St. Louis. They talk about ancient tattoos here. This is Ann Austin. She is the one leading the research here. This story really goes with this video I made back in June of last summer. The tattoo, the ancients, ancient Egypt body art lecture. I will leave a link to this video below. Right down here it says, Deir el Medina, especially interested Austin because the remains at the site had never been studied before. It was home to artisans who crafted the royal tombs, the Valley of the Kings, and was originally excavated in the 1920s to 1950s. However, studying human remains was not prioritized, leaving much of daily life at Deir el Medina unexamined. Here's one of the tattoos I featured last summer in that video. Austin says that this person might have been a priestess or a healer. It says we have tattoos on our bodies that make this phrase to do good in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. They're placed on her neck as well as arms. I don't think that's a coincidence. The ones on her necks cover her voice box, so when she spoke or sang, those vibrations would have touched the tattoo and would have gotten the benefit of this ability to do good. This is related to an ancient Egyptian concept called contagious magic. According to this belief, her voice would have been imbued with special gifts by coming into contact with the hieroglyphics. Those hieroglyphs are a little hard to make out, but you can definitely see the Eye of Horus in there for sure. It says Austin found a tattoo associated with Bess, a god linked to the household, on one of the other mummies, and that came in recent research. It says scholars originally dismissed tattoos as something that's just about eroticizing female bodies. That's one way of explaining why they only show up on women's bodies, but the evidence that we're getting suggests that it's probably more complicated than that. That's a cool story. I'll leave a link below. Let's move on. Next story, when we talk a little ancient America. Hopefully I get a few comments from people in this area. Maybe they have some updates on what's going on down here. Newark Earthworks right here. Here's one of the great circles here down at Newark. There used to be earthworks all over this area. There are a few remaining today. The ones I want to talk about are right up here. This is Mound Builders Country Club right down here. Before you can say, how can they build a golf course over ancient ruins? Well, if the golf course wasn't here, it would be a lot like these neighborhoods around here. And these earthworks would be totally gone, lost to history. Here's the large, I think they call this an octagon one down here. As I zoom in, you can see these are giant henges or giant embankments built up here. This is the large circle right down here. This golf course pretty much preserved this ancient site. Now here's a story from a few days ago. Ohio History Connection offers $1.66 million to Newark Country Club and Octagon Mounds dispute. And I have talked about this when I have made videos on this site. People want to visit here, but it's a country club here, kind of privately owned. But I guess they are trying to iron this out. I will leave this link below, but it has a video here attached. These are some of the most impressive earthworks in all the country, and they have astronomical alignments here. Here you see how they're kind of formed around the golf course here, but they are preserved. I guess that's the most important thing. This golf course has been a business since 1910. And there's a lease involved. The Ohio History Connection is involved. It's a sticky legal situation, I guess. Anybody in the area that can give me some updated info? I guess they're going to court. I'm going to try to work this all out. Now, I've seen more than a few stories pop up for this over the past few months, says Joe Fraley, attorney for Mound Builders Golf Course, said the most recent appraisal and offer doesn't represent the true value of the land. He noted Ohio History Connections appraisal company previously valued the leasehold at $2 million, so he wasn't sure why the company lowered the figure. So, sticky situation. Ancient site here, golf course. Can you really put a true monetary value on an ancient site that tells us so much about the history of the people who were here before us? I don't know. Those are 5 ancient history news stories. My stomach is starting to growl. I think I'm going to go make some dinner. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very safe day.